And then, so not to surprise you, Steve, did you find some sourcing for your heat map?
Gave it to you.
Well, are you prepared to give it to the audience? Promises made, promises not kept. That's our motto.
Did I make that?
Your source
You really did.
Crazy man.
All right, no, that's cool. It's also funny because last episode Johnny was like, "Hey guys, I'm definitely not going to like close down my feed as soon as we're done," and then you did. So that was kind of funny too.
I left it open.
That was when we were on our discussion last time, but the time before that, when we recorded episode 0, it's all good, man. No judgment.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah. I power leaved.
Yeah, so if you watch the whole podcast that I upload to YouTube, as soon as you say, "Oh yeah, I'll definitely stick around and give it a chance. I won't shut it down right away," above your face I put, "Definitely shut it down right away."
There you go. Promises not kept.
Again,
on brand.
That's what we're all about. Yeah. All right. So, did you guys have a chance to review the outline?
I did. Yep.
Okay.
No, not even.
All right. Well, partially, I'm not sure what to do now because I thought we were going to talk about your source from Reddit, but that's okay if you don't have it.
Sources.
Can you find that?
Discussion on Trotsky?
Yeah, I'll try to find it. Give me a second. I'll see if I can find it and I'll share it.
Yeah, we can. We can just do a 5-minute discussion about Trotsky. Or actually, I had an amusing anecdote that I could share.
Yeah, fire away. What do you got?
Let's hear it.
Well, maybe let's start by saying hello, audience. Welcome. This is the OSAS podcast, or ofstrawandsteel if you're not into the whole brevity thing. My name's Ben. I would like to remind you to always fear the old blood. Who do I have with me today?
John Blaze.
And, sorry, what's that?
Also known as?
John Howard.
It's your real name, dude.
Oh, we are using our real names. Okay. We have a mysterious voice that's saying things but not introducing.
My name is Steve, reporting from the free state of Florida.
Very good, the free state of Florida. So we're going to start by doing a quick recap of our last episode, which we're going to call the round down. And so we're just going to revisit some of the things we talked about. In the free state of Florida, our correspondent, Steve, is actually looking for the source that he promised but did not prepare for this evening. But this is an exciting show because, as the viewers and listeners may remember, we were talking about this being our inaugural, our real first episode. We're actually going to debate a topic, and I think I'm a little bit nervous, honestly. I talked a lot of shit in the chat that we have, but I'm not as confident as I made myself to sound.
How did you guys? What was the consensus about the cut and the promos here?
Oh, I love the idea.
I set it out and I put the Ultimate Warrior out there and I got nothing back from you guys.
No, I said I thought it was great. I watched it. I laughed. I'm not sure if to me, that feels like something Crowder would do, which I love. I love his bits, his cover songs and stuff. But they're all so well produced that I feel a little bit intimidated by the idea.
Agreed.
But I think eventually we could get there, and maybe it'll be funnier if it's really shitty looking. I don't know.
I 100% agree with that. I think that if it's too high of a production quality, I think that we'd be hacks.
Yeah, we are that for sure. I'm also going to move my microphone yet further away from me because I'm seeing some yellow spiking on my sound reading. Can you guys hear me all right still?
Yeah. Yes. I don't know. I feel like Steve's wicked quiet on the mic.
Still quiet?
I don't know. Maybe it's your speakers, John Boy, because I can hear him just fine. He sounds as loud as you do to me.
Crazy.
Is this good listening? This is good radio, right? We're just talking about our technical issues to the audience. Steve appears to be looking through his phone at the moment, so this is
yeah, I'm trying to get the link that I sent to you.
Great stuff. So go ahead, buddy. What do you got?
Sources on everything.
Well, again, you promised them, so I'm just
serious.
Johnny, you're going to be our moderator this week. So why don't you just recap for the listening audience, the viewing audience, what we're going to talk about?
All right, so we are going to be talking about and debating whether or not healthcare is a human right. From the round down, we talked about the purpose of the podcast is to get out of our echo chambers and to debate topics that we may or may not necessarily agree with. Taking stances and trying to defend a position. We're taking a left position and a right position. I think we've all agreed that we're taking the left position as the argument that we're trying to defend, correct?
That's right.
All right, so the first time that we did our little spud a meter right there. Steve ended up on the left position right there. Benny is defending the right position, and I'm going to attempt to try to moderate the debate between these two. So that's what we got going on right now. Healthcare is a human right. Steve will be defending the left. Benny will be defending the right.
Steve, I hope psychological care is in your health insurance plan because you're going down tonight, buddy.
The HMO guy didn't know how to approach this, so he did this.
If I have a mind, it cost a dime.
Yeah, that's true. Very apropos. Good. Yeah, that's reflexive shit right there. That's good. Yeah, the other thing I wanted to talk about is we are balancing technical issues as we're trying to get this off the ground. We've tried one recording and editing platform. I'm not going to name names, but it was Podcastle and it was horrible. Like they are literally still sending me messages saying, "Hey, we saw your tech support ticket. We fixed your problem." Oh, it's not fixed? We'll talk to you in 5 days, and then we still won't have your problem fixed. So that's the state of that. So right now we're trying Riverside, which is the native studio recording and editing platform that's on Spotify. I think it looks a little bit more slick. It looks like it's going to be better, but we're still very much learning how to do this on the fly. Just a little bit of patience and grace would be appreciated as we try to get our feathers grown in. Yeah, that's right. Because after all, we're
having fun anyway.
Yeah, I want to tell you guys something that I learned about this week. Everybody's familiar with the Greek mythological figure of Achilles, right?
Oh, yeah.
Certainly.
So studying mythology is fascinating because whether it's, ancient Greek, Roman, Eastern, Christian, whatever it is, these huge human ideas are somehow like boiled down and reduced to this syrup that they just pack so much symbolism into these myths. And so do you guys know why Achilles was such a proficient warrior?
I do not.
Can't say I have.
In the mythology, it's because, well, first of all, he was half god and then half, I think, ocean nymph, sea nymph. But his mother dipped him into the river Styx. And I was thinking a lot about that because it sort of struck me as being a little bit of a parallel to what we're trying to do on this podcast. Because I think we in our first episode, our introduction, maybe you guys, because you were accessories to me, have lied to the audience a little bit. It's not only that we're trying to be charitable and, fair to the opposing side. I think my belief is that conservatives tend to understand the positions, the thinking of the other side better than they understand the conservative side. And it's like Achilles in the sense that I think we've had to dip ourselves into the waters of the Styx to become stronger in our argumentation. So I think that's another thing that I didn't want to necessarily gloss over because I think it's an important point that in order to really understand and believe your own core positions in a true and firm way, I think you really need to expose yourself to the way that other people think. And so that's going to be another part of what we're doing and talking about in these debates we're having every week.
Couldn't agree more.
Very well said, Benny.
Oh, thank you. But the other thing I want to tell you guys is that I'm full of battle fuel because I made a turkey pot pie, which I ate for dinner. And hold on, wait. I didn't have quite enough turkey pot pie filling, so I put a layer of brie cheese on the bottom inside the crust.
It didn't freaking destroy the bottom of the crust there?
Not when I'm the chef, baby.
Dang, man, you're innovating.
I smashed 2 recipes together, but again, it was a hack because I didn't have enough stuffing, so I need to fill up the inside of the pie. But it was delicious, and I hope you're ready, Steve. That was some brain fuel right there, buddy. I don't know if you can match it.
Jamie, pull up a picture of the turkey brie pie, please. Let me pull it up.
Where's this brie?
Yeah. It was really good, very rich. So I actually don't know if it's going to make my brain slower or faster, but we'll see what unfolds.
If you pass out in the middle of the podcast, we'll know.
I actually am feeling slightly out of breath even as I'm talking to you guys. So. By the way, Johnny, I don't know what your deal is, but maybe you didn't realize we're a whiskey drinking podcast. So, Steve, cheers.
I had to go in the basement.
Steve is drinking some kind of cocktail there. Is that?
Looks like an iced down whiskey.
It's just ice whiskey?
That was all.
Still the bullet. Okay.
Yes, I put it on ice. Let's get that out of the way.
My Scottish friend, if you added anything to your whiskey, including an ice cube, used to say, "Enjoy your cocktail, pansy."
I thought you were allowed to put a couple drops of water in there. as a
So
Scotch.
I like that, but well, that's maybe a whiskey argumentation. We'll have to do a special podcast dedicated to that, I suppose.
All right.
If
I'm not getting
anyone,
fancy with $19 bottles of whiskey, so sorry. 119 is another story.
you have to pour it through garbage to make it drinkable.
Sounds like my kind of whiskey right there.
Also known as, name your least favorite whiskey brand, I suppose. I don't know.
For me, it's Evan Williams.
Oh, people love the EW.
No, I got to back up to Johnny on this one. You're wrong and bad if you like it.
I
There's
guess it's a
saying that says friends don't let friends drink Evan Williams.
Okay, fair enough. I've got bad friends then. If anybody cares to know, this is Michter's Kentucky bourbon, and
That's a good one.
my favorite, and it is delicious. And this is a rocks glass that Steve's little brother Brian got for me. So cheers to you, Brian, wherever
Little
you
son
are.
of a bitch, man. He gets the best presents.
Be right. Hey, I don't want to be a freaking Debbie Downer here, but I'm having a really hard time hearing Steve from my end.
Sound levels look like. Say something, Steve. Recite the Trotsky Pledge.
How now, brown cow?
No wonder he got kicked out of Russia. Okay. Not a lot of substance to
Can
that
you guys
ideology.
read? I lay my stuff out right here.
Yeah,
It's
it's
not
true.
a Russian asset.
That's true. I suppose you could be Belarusian, though, and still qualify as a... No, I guess technically that would still be a Russian asset. I guess you're not. I guess you're not a Russian asset. Fair.
It says it plain and
When
clear
you
right
said
there.
no, that's all I needed to hear.
If any guy with a thick Russian accent wearing a hammer and sickle on their shirt and dragging a starved-to-death child behind them says they're not a Russian asset, you can just believe them.
Just believe him, exactly.
Yeah.
Were you guys aware that Mongolia is still a country? Like, what even happens there? I just found that out like a week ago. Mongolia is actually a country.
So is it
It's fascinating.
still not PC to call somebody a Mongoloid then?
I don't know about Mongoloid.
Is that where the actual term comes from? Is it from
Oh, yeah.
Mongolia?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Which is
You
an
can call
insult
people
to
whatever you want. Everything's back on
suffers
the
of Down
now.
syndrome. Maybe. Anywho, I think at this point, all I'm really doing is stalling, whereas we should get into the debate, unless you guys have anything else you want to add to the round down, and then we'll move on to the core of the episode.
No, I think I'm ready to give this a little run right here and see how it turns out.
Very
Let's
good.
get into it.
So, Johnny, as the moderator, why don't you explain to the audience what's going to happen from here?
All right, so right now what's going to happen is we are going to start every debate with the opening statements. We are going to start the opening statements with the left side and then returning open statement with the right. We are going to go into a debate, arguing points here, and at some point, I'll probably be asking some questions as a moderator, trying to point the discussion in certain places, and then we will have closing statements. The closing statement will be from the right to start, finishing with the left. So opening statements, 2 to 5 minutes, I believe. So I think that if you guys are ready to go, I think I am ready to start the countdown.
Ready when you are.
One last question before Steve launches in. Are we going to go for a set amount of time or just until Steve's crying on the floor?
You said you were really, really confident, and now you're a little bit nervous, and now we're getting the confidence back there.
I'm trying to hype myself up here. Yeah,
the Michters and the Brie.
that's helping.
Are we
So
ready?
yeah, 20 to 30 minutes will go, or until it feels like there's a natural conclusion to the debate.
Seems
Yeah.
fine.
Steve-O, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, I'm ready. Start it down.
All right, so I guess I'll start with my mission statement on this. Basically, what I intend to show right now, we're going to break down a few things. What is healthcare and what is a right? And I intend to show that healthcare is a human right. And furthermore, I intend to show that it is the utmost of human rights. It takes precedence over just about anything else that I can think of. We're going to talk about rights versus privileges. A lot of people think that healthcare is a privilege. So I'm going to compare and contrast these things to separate rights that we have and separate privileges that we have. Basically, I'm going to mop the floor with this guy, and he has no idea what's coming. And that's it. I don't know if that was 2 to 5 minutes, but
You're just
here we go.
shy of a minute right there on that one.
Piece of cake, man.
There you go.
Joke's on you. My hair is too thin to be used as a mop. So, all right, John Boy, are you ready for me?
I'm ready for you. Ready when you are.
I want to begin by recognizing the evident compassion of my friend defending the idea that healthcare is a human right. I know in his heart he believes, as indeed I do myself, that in an ideal world, no innocent human being should have to suffer, especially not from conditions or diseases that are treatable when treatment's available. However, we, all of us, occupy a world that's governed by reality. In this ideal world in which it's easy to simply declare that anything we like is a human right does not and probably can never exist. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, spearheaded by the well-meaning Eleanor Roosevelt in 1948, was a gut reaction to the horrors perpetrated by the Axis powers of World War II, as the nations of the world struggled to make sense of what had just happened. But as good as the intentions underpinning the Declaration might have been, the Declaration was overbroad on a few counts. Let's demonstrate this with a simple defining of the word rights. Oxford's Concise English Dictionary states that rights are simply things to which a person is entitled, but there are many different kinds of rights. Natural rights, workers' rights, and legal rights, just to name a few, and all based, to some degree, on context. Human rights per se are likewise something very specific. They are defined broadly but explicitly by the Declaration itself in its preamble as being fundamental, equal, and inalienable. Moreover, as opposed to, say, animal rights, one should expect that human rights pertain to what is singularly human. Herein lies the rub. There is nothing about healthcare that is fundamental, equal, inalienable, or even human. The UN has declared healthcare a human right in contravention of its own definitions. Any person born into a state of nature has freedom. They have the innate ability to pursue that freedom. They are at liberty to think or speak what they desire. These rights are fundamental. They exist independently and are neither born upon nor defined by the existence of any other person. These rights are also equal in that any other person in a state of nature has no more or less access to them relative to the first person. Further, although a person can willingly suspend any of these rights for themselves, or even have them suppressed by others, they cannot be given away. Being inalienable, they are always available once the perturbation is removed. Healthcare, on the other hand, must necessarily rely on institutions that simply do not exist in nature. Institutions which depend on the service of others, usually incalculable numbers of others, and institutions which, even if they do exist within the reach of any given individual, are not universal, nor are they equal, nor could they likely ever be. Healthcare, therefore, is not a right, it is a commodity, and people do not have natural human rights vis-a-vis commodities. It's unfortunate that the UN has perhaps irrevocably muddied these waters, but in declaring healthcare a human right, the organization has confused generations of sensitive and idealistic people, and Steve, who long for some easy panacea to the horrifying problems of sickness and suffering.
3 minutes, 15 seconds. Well said, Benny.
Too long.
And yet within time.
Steve, you
Very
had said
cold,
you were
very
going
calculated.
to,
Thank you for that.
You're going to define what a right was. I know Ben had talked about what a right was right there. How are you defining a right?
No, I'd actually say that's pretty well on point. I don't think I have anything to add to that.
Okay.
It's inalienable. Yeah, nothing to add. That's perfect. Totally agree.
So I guess I would ask you then, Steve, if you define rights as being inalienable, what is it about healthcare that qualifies it as a human right, whereas in a state of nature, there simply is no healthcare?
Well, what else is in nature? Is freedom of speech in nature? Is freedom of self-defense in nature?
Yes, of course.
Is it though? Explain.
Yeah, if you're standing in a field, you can scream whatever you want into the void. Nobody's there to stop you.
Well, okay, sure. So let's dig down deeper into healthcare. What does healthcare mean? Obviously, we've got the typical, it's the hospital, it's surgeries, it's primary care, but it extends beyond that. Exercise is human health. Food is human health, right? Eating healthy or unhealthy, you have the choice, you have the right to do that. So I would say that as an individual person in nature, you absolutely have the right to eat what you choose. You can exercise or not exercise as you see fit. I think even religion might fall into that category. I think religion and prayer is a very healthy thing. So you can choose to do that or not do that. And that's your right to choose to do that.
So if I may, it sounds like you're conflating health and healthcare there, because you talked about health, for example, exercise being health, but that's not the same as healthcare.
Exercise is health care. You're taking care of your health. That's by definition.
So in the sense that people are advocating for universal healthcare vis-a-vis a service that's provided by a government or organization, is that something that you're advocating for in your position?
Well, no, I'm not saying that explicitly. We can kind of get into that if you like, but as far as health care goes, having the right to it simply means you cannot be denied it for any reason. Not that you have free access to a commodity. It just means you can't be denied. And to that end, I would say that any other right can be stripped away. Your freedom of self-defense can be stripped away if you're a felon, for example. Your freedom of speech if you're chucked in prison. But we still take care of these people, right? If you get cancer and you're in prison, we still take care of you. You know, if you're injured.
Fair enough. That's an interesting point. Although I would think that being that we're defending the nostrum, I think in the sense that it's meant by people who usually say healthcare is a human right. I do believe usually it's Bernie Sanders types that are saying these words.
It's been conflated. But to me, I want to separate the right to do something versus the right to access a commodity, because they're completely different things. Personally, so in my assessment of this, what I found is that a full government system, a single payer plan, as they call it, is probably not the most effective way to provide it. Conversely, a fully private care is also not the way. And we're kind of getting into universal health care, but do you want to get into that a little bit?
I think that's what's meant when people say healthcare is a human right.
Well, that may be what's meant, but I mean, when you talk about the right to self-defense, it doesn't mean you can walk into a gun store and just walk out with a gun, right? You merely have the right to purchase a commodity, and you can't be denied. Which that one can be stripped away. Right?
Well, hold on. You're conflating gun ownership with self-defense. They're not the same thing.
Well, right. So the right to self-defense doesn't mean you can walk into a gun store and walk out with a free gun, right? It merely means you have the right to purchase whatever commodity you like. Same thing with healthcare. You merely have the right to purchase any commodity you want. You can't be denied because you're Jewish or you're Christian or agnostic or whatever, black or white or green.
Okay.
You have the right to purchase any commodity you choose, and you have the right to fly to Suriname and have a shaman try to treat your cancer. I don't know if it's going to work, but you're free to try it. Nobody can stop you from doing that, and they shouldn't. And we have seen instances in human history, many instances in human history, where people were denied health care, and we call that genocide. So
yeah, interesting. I feel like that's a bit of a conflation and a stretch again. And as you may remember from my opening statement, I did specifically set aside a caveat that healthcare should be available to any innocent person suffering from disease. And this extends, of course, to, I would say, your example or your analogy of a criminal who doesn't have the right to free speech in prison or whatever it may be. Okay. But the caveat is that in a state of nature, that person does have a right to free speech. So I want to set aside the fact that if they violate the laws of the civilization in which they live, they forfeit some of these rights. It's an interesting point that you make that healthcare is still given to them as wards of the state functionally. But in a state of nature, that's where all rights are said to exist in purity. And that's the only way that we can judge as a standard, because everyone's situation is different. I guess.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. You're a victim of your circumstance, right? I mean, if you're in the middle of the woods and you break your arm, you're well within your rights to fix your arm, right? I mean, what are you getting at?
So, yes, but again, I don't know if we can really productively have this conversation if we're talking about quote unquote care that's provided by oneself to oneself.
Well, why not? I mean, self-defense is the same thing. Certainly, a doctor can take care of himself, right? I mean, if a doctor's sick, he can diagnose himself, he can treat himself. Anybody else with...
Are you a doctor?
I mean, I know enough that if I have the sniffles, I know what to do, right?
That's a good example.
If I get a fever, I can take Tylenol. I mean, I'm not going to operate on myself. I don't know that anybody would.
But I think the state...
My point being, you have the right to that, provided you can pay for the commodity. Or if you can find it for free, you're fully within your rights to access it any way you see fit.
So maybe it would be helpful to ask you how you feel about the Universal Declaration on Human Rights set forth in 1948, which is where the first popularized or broad use of that term, human rights, was first established.
You're catching me off guard because I don't believe in any human-made document, to be honest with you. That's just me.
So in the UN Declaration, it lays out a number of things that at that time, those people who created the Declaration proposed or asserted were human rights. And so in the course of your research to defend the topic, did you come across or look into the document at all or read it or? Okay.
Should I have?
So,
Yeah, you
well,
wanna talk
I
about
guess
it? Do
me?
you want to tell us about the document you're talking about?
Well, only in as much as it relates to the conversation we're having, where basically in the wake of World War II, the UN was established, of course, and then they laid out a Declaration of Human Rights in which they basically said, hey, all the shit that the Nazis did, like, that's bad. Let's do not that, and let's make it a human right, okay, so that, like, the Holocaust doesn't happen again, or whatever the intention was. And among those provisions was the statement that healthcare is a human right. Now, the UN, in its documentation, sort of laid out the conceit that any nation or organization or individual in violation of human rights, so for example, something like, Hitler interning all the Jews and then, creating a genocide, that's in violation of human rights, and that any perpetrator of that violation should be held to account. That hasn't really happened. And so because the Human Rights Declaration is the place where it's laid out that healthcare should be a human right, I just thought you might call back to that or have some relationship with that idea as it was laid out in the Declaration.
No, rights aren't guaranteed by any government or governing bodies. Rights are guaranteed by God. That is all.
So perhaps you can tell us where in the Bible it states that healthcare is a right given by God.
Where's the right to self-defense? I mean, where's the right to freedom in the Bible? Where's the right to freedom of speech in the Bible? I don't like. What do you
well,
what?
You're the one making the proposition that these rights are laid out by God. So I would imagine that you could justify that statement.
This is silly. I mean, your right to be alive. I don't like. What do you mean?
What are you saying? It should be. So I think what you're saying is it should be obvious or self-demonstrative that we have the right to be alive and functional because of
certainly
a God-given right to do so.
Yeah, certainly. You have the right to speak your mind. You have these aren't laid out in the Bible. These are self-evident, as it says.
I mean, don't you think that there's a relationship between the Imago Dei and the rights that you're laying out, like free speech or the right to existence? If we're created in the image of God, then we're granted these rights, perhaps in that capacity. But there's certainly plenty of examples of self-defense in the Bible. For example, there's plenty of examples of liberty and bondage. There's plenty of examples of these other rules that I think you're harkening back to, but I can't think of one.
Plenty of examples of healing sick people and raising them from the dead, as it were, which we're kind of getting on the cusp of that too, aren't we?
Feel free to elaborate on that. I don't understand where you're going.
Oh, we're really close to having immortal human beings. Have you not seen this?
Oh, I see what you mean. I didn't know you meant broadly culturally, like in our society. I thought you meant in this argument.
Wow.
Be that as it may, I'm not sure there's a right to those things. It's not as though everybody will instantaneously have access to what you're describing.
Well, no, not everybody's going to have instantaneous access to every commodity, right? I mean, not everybody has access to a firearm. Not everybody has access to a newspaper. But you're a victim of your surroundings. Whatever's available to you, but it can't be denied to you, right? Or shouldn't be.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the point. It sounds like what you're saying is that it sounds like you're agreeing with me that healthcare is a commodity. And it sounds like you're saying people should not be denied the ability to buy that commodity.
No, that's not the healthcare is a lot of things, right? It's not just surgery. It's not just doctors taking care of you. It's all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, you mentioned exercise.
Sure. Yeah.
Please.
No, I just had a question, Steve. You had talked about rights versus privileges. You said that, people are a victim of their circumstances. Do you find that, that might be more of a privilege to have access to those things versus a right to them?
So we can talk about privileges. I think we can agree that driving is a privilege. We can agree that you have the right to travel, probably, right? We can agree you have the right to travel, but driving itself is a privilege. So driving is a privilege. That can be revoked, right? There's any number of reasons that it could be revoked, right? If you're drunk driving, if you get into multiple accidents, if you're blind, if you're Asian, if you have narcolepsy, it can be. There's nothing funny about nothing funny about narcolepsy. It can be revoked, right? You can't drive. Like, I'm sorry, you can't operate a motor vehicle on the roads. That can be revoked, but Like I said, for healthcare, regardless of your situation, it's going to be provided to you, or you're going to provide it yourself. You can't be denied a surgery because you're a felon. You can't be denied for any reason, provided that you have the means to pay for the commodity if you need one. But you can go to, but also healthcare is food, right? You can go to the store, you can purchase whatever you want, you can grow it yourself if you like, you can keep chickens in your backyard. Some people do. I don't know, they're weirdos. It's weird to me.
They are weird.
But kings of
I
the
hate
world,
those
kings of the
people.
world, kings of the world.
I miss
But
my chickens.
You're free to do all of these things within your confines.
Maybe it would be helpful if you could sort of narrow down your definition of healthcare, because it sounds like it encompasses almost everything.
Well, anything having to do with your health, sure.
Friendship. I could make a very cogent argument that friendship is related to health.
Fully aware that you could, but does it keep you alive? I don't know. It keeps you from killing yourself, I guess.
I can find the study for next week. I'll find that study. Do you want to include friendship in healthcare?
I'm sure you could. No, I don't think anybody would deny that exercise is healthcare, right? I don't think anybody would deny that eating healthy or unhealthy, as it were, is healthcare. I don't know that you deny that. Certainly you're in better health if you eat healthy stuff, right?
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Again, you're conflating health and health care. They're not the same.
That is healthcare. Eating is healthcare. You're taking care of your health. I mean, it's spelled out.
Yeah, I guess maybe for the purposes of this argument, I'm just, maybe we'll agree to disagree on this, but I think for the sake of the premise, health care is a service provided by a carer or care provider.
Whatever helps your point of view, whatever helps your argument.
Yeah, like broadening out the definition of healthcare to include walks on the beach, maybe.
Get out of here. Well, exercise, certainly. All right. So we'll narrow it down for you to any services provided, right? Agreed? Any services provided.
Well, like an oil change? What services? What are you talking about?
Surgeries, primary care. What else you want to throw in there?
So I'm even willing to say that, like your example before, like a witch doctor or shaman could technically provide some kind of health care, right? Sure. At least that's what that cultural set believes, like a rain dance is, for example. And I'm not trying to be glib about that, but I am just trying to narrow our definitions a little bit. So you're saying that any quote unquote provider that assumes a role of provider for a sick or somebody suffering from some kind of disease or other malady and provides that care to that person, whatever the care is.
Right. In a just world, they would provide their care to anyone.
That's fine. That's a different conversation, though. Is it a human right?
Yeah, it's your right to choose how to be taken care of. Actually, the COVID vaccine is the perfect example, right? You have the right to take or not take it as you see fit, right? That's healthcare.
That's a bodily autonomy argument, though.
Is it? Well, it's sick versus not sick, as I see it.
Right. But I guess what I'm saying is if you contract COVID and there are no care providers around you and there's nobody to administer that vaccine and that vaccine does in fact not exist, how could you argue that it's a human right to have that vaccine?
Okay, well, if you're in the middle of the woods, do you have the freedom of speech? You can't contact anyone else.
But you can still speak.
To who?
I don't think speech is governed or defined by the ability of somebody else to hear the speech you're using.
Isn't it?
I guess this is a if a tree falls in the woods line of argumentation.
If you're standing in the middle of a field, do you have the right to self-defense?
Well, if you're not being attacked, then there's no such thing as self-defense.
If you're being attacked by a bear, you have the right to defend yourself? How are you going to defend yourself?
Yeah, again, there are caveats. I mean, just because you have the right to self-defense doesn't mean you can automatically fend off a bear. I don't think anybody's making that argument.
Right, but it's still a right, right?
Yeah, of course.
Right. So you may not be able to cure yourself, but you have the right to try.
Yes, yourself. But we agreed, finally, that this is a care provided by somebody else argument.
That was going to be my question right there, is that like you talked about self-defense and freedom of speech. At no point I feel like in some of the examples given, if there's been like commodities being purchased. So I'm kind of not sure where we fall with this in terms of like the like rights versus privilege type of deal. I feel like having access to somebody's goods or services is different than being able to speak freely and have access to food and to defend yourself if a bear is there?
I think that's a Steve question.
Yeah. Sorry. I'm just saying, all I'm saying is that all these other examples, there's no exchange of of services to be able to exercise these rights, whereas Benny's talking about the fact that there's an exchange of services by someone for someone in terms of the healthcare. So I'm just kind of want to know where you stand with being able to reconcile that.
Oh, well, sure there is. I mean, there's commodities for everything. There's commodities for self-defense. It doesn't mean you get it for free, right? There's commodities for freedom of expression. It doesn't mean you get a newspaper for free. I mean, the list goes on, right? I mean, it doesn't mean that you have the right to access it for free. It just means you have the right to access it.
I would say that vis-a-vis the conversation about whether healthcare is a commodity, which we've both agreed that it is, it's a service that you can either pay for or have given to you, but for free or at cost.
It doesn't have to be. I mean, it can be free. There are, I mean, Doctors Without Borders, for example.
Yeah, that's what I was just saying, is that it can be either given to you freely or you can pay for it, but it is a commodity and a service. But what I would say is that I think when people say that healthcare is a human right, what they're doing is they're conflating human rights with civil rights. And civil rights tends to be conflated with something like a race issue or a gender issue or something like that. But all civil means is that it falls into the category of something provided by a government to a citizen of that government or country. And so if you want to say that healthcare is something that a government should be able to give to its citizens, that's fine. If you want to say that, oh, hey, I live in England, so I have access to the healthcare that's provided by the British government, that's fine too. That's a civil right. But healthcare cannot be a human right if it doesn't exist in a state of nature, which it clearly doesn't.
Well, I don't see that it doesn't. I mean, people have been taking care of each other for years, right? And most of the time without cost. You fix a broken arm with a stick and some string. That's healthcare. It's not great healthcare, right? Certainly by today's standard, but it is healthcare.
Yeah, Benny, I want to ask, so you said it doesn't exist in nature, but what about all the medicine and things like that's found in nature prior to having the modern healthcare industry, where people were treated and obviously saying that it's not the best, but it's still found in nature. What do you think about that?
That's a good question. I think to that I would say any right that we've been talking about so far, and we've been sort of beating the drum on speech, for example, or the right to self-defense, or I would even say I would add to that property ownership. Like if I'm in the woods and I've never met another person in my entire life, I'm in a pure state of nature, I could just pick up a rock and claim that rock as my own because I have access to that property ownership. But what I would say is that if I've never met another person in my life, especially somebody who specializes in providing care for medical or other ailments, there is no human right to healthcare because there simply is no healthcare that exists in that state. Now, I could wander around the woods tasting mushrooms and trying to figure out which one makes my headache go away. That's not healthcare, though. That's just me eating foods and noticing the effects that those foods have on me. Healthcare is something that's established over generations and perhaps thousands of years of careful attention to those details, and it is established over time and grows into the context of a society or civilization. So again, I would argue that what we're talking about in that case is a civil right if that society or civilization is going to provide that healthcare, but it is not a human right because it doesn't exist in nature. I can't just, if I'm born and I've never met anybody else in my life, I might eventually stupidly figure out how to split my arm if I've broken it, but that's not the same as being provided health.
I think we're getting a little too deep on that. I mean, we kind of took out care by other people, which is probably dumb on my part. But I don't see that you can't take care of yourself however you see fit. I still don't see that. And I get back to, you still have the right to be taking care of somebody, provided that you can pay for the commodity if it's necessary, and it may not be necessary.
So I guess maybe the last thing I would ask you, because moderator, you can tell me if you think we've arrived at an impasse, but I think maybe we have. The last thing I would ask you, Steve, is do you agree that the statement healthcare is a human right generally is used to refer to the belief that a government should be providing healthcare to its citizens?
It has recently been conflated as such, yes.
How recently?
Within the past 60 years.
Sorry, 6 or 60?
60.
I agree with that.
Incorrectly so.
Maybe we can end on a note of accord.
Well, that puts us pretty much right in the pocket here. I started my timer just a little bit late, but we're at 23 minutes right now, so it's probably like 20, 25, 26 for the debate, which right in between the 20 and 30 that we wanted to be at.
I think
I'm
we're
not
right on
necessarily
cue.
sure we need to do closing statements, but if we're going to do that, and I think maybe we should, just to observe tradition as we're
I think so.
establishing it, I would say that
I think we should to do the closing statements, like you said, just in terms of keeping it the same and having a structure.
yeah. My closing statement will not be nearly as long as my opening statement was, but the only thing I would say is that in the common parlance, call it 60 years ago until today, whatever you want to qualify it as, people are using the nostrum, healthcare as a human right, to assert their belief and advocate for governments providing healthcare to their citizens free of charge or on a universal basis, whatever it is, in defiance of whatever the current American system is. Many people hold out the example that there are only 43 countries of the 193 countries on the planet that don't provide some level of coverage. But the fact of the matter is that all of these terms of coverage are completely variable. South Africa has universal health care, but there are no doctors. The care that they provide, if they are available, is terrible. And nobody with any kind of serious disease would choose to go to South Africa instead of using the American system if they had the choice. So at the end of the day, because of all the points I've made that healthcare cannot and does not exist in a state of nature, it cannot possibly be considered a human right, because any human right must be fundamental, inalienable, equal, and that's the end of the argument.
All right, Steve, you
Very
got the
good.
floor.
I will close with healthcare absolutely is a human right. There's no question about it. It cannot be denied to you for any reason. It does not necessarily mean, though a lot of people claim, and it's not such a bad idea, that it should be free. It's interesting that you bring up South Africa because Australia also has a universal healthcare plan and is far superior to the US. So there's that. It's odd that you would leave that one out. I'm not sure why you might do that. But anyhow, you can't be denied for any reason based on race, color, creed, or anything else. You have access. You have guaranteed access to a commodity provided you can afford it. That is the end.
All right.
Virtual handshake, Steve. I think you acquitted yourself very well on that. That was, man.
Yeah, you could see him
I don't know what.
jump into his skin.
I have so many thoughts on this.
Maybe we should. I don't know. What do you guys think? Maybe,
I'm done.
what do you guys think? Maybe we should leave it for the round down for our next round.
I'm not talking about the debate itself, but in the preparation.
Okay, let's hear it. Yeah, give it to us.
I will tell you, the left has a serious problem in this country, and I probably shouldn't tell them because they might actually try to become good debaters. They are absolutely terrible at spelling out their ideas. I can't tell you, I watched dozens of hours of footage claiming that it was about healthcare as a human right, and they immediately cut to universal healthcare. Every single time. They don't try to get to the crux of the issue. And we actually did it. And you did very, very well, Benny. You said everything that I would have said and more. But they always go right to the emotional argument. Well, if you're not for universal human healthcare, then you just want 300 million people to die. Like, come on. That bullshit doesn't work anymore.
That's a straw man.
Nobody, exactly right. It's a straw man. Nobody wants 300 million people to die. Okay. Explain to me your point of view on why it's a human right. And I couldn't get in dozens of hours of this footage, and maybe more than that, a single person to lay out the case for it as a human right. Not a single one. Only the case for universal health care. That was it. I've heard that a million times. I thought I could find something. There's plenty of stuff on why it's not a human right. I mean, but oh my God, it's fascinating. The left is really terrible at debating, and there are many such cases. There are a lot of issues where they actually do have an upper hand, and they never use it. They're ill-equipped. I don't know what the problem is, but they refuse to use logical argument. My point being on this is that the right has a really good way of structuring a debate that will actually change people's minds on stuff who don't agree with them. The left is incapable of formulating an argument where an opposing point of view may actually agree with you.
It's an emotional club. It's an emotional club.
It's always emotional. It's always emotional. And there's plenty of logic within these things. Like, I could make the case for higher taxes in some places, and I've kind of made it to you guys in private. where like higher taxes in Chicago. Okay. Why would these people vote for a Republican to lower their taxes? They have a great quality of life there. It's a great place to live. They have awesome schools. They have, I mean, some of the best schools in the country are in Chicago. They have awesome places to eat. Like the nightlife is great. Like I totally get why they wouldn't vote for a Republican to just bring in a bunch of Walmarts and Arby's. I totally get it. But they don't make this argument. I totally get it. Like you don't want Chicago overrun with Arby's. Okay, like I get it. I live in Florida, the home of Arby's and Walmart.
I will say, if I may just cut in real quick, Johnny, I want to hear your thoughts about this, but I just have a quick thing that I wanted to say, which is that, Steve, number one, you definitely threw me for a loop with the prison care argument. That's a really potent weapon, I feel like, in this debate from the left position. I wasn't really expecting that, and I wasn't really sure how to grapple with it when you brought it up. So hats off to you on that. That was excellent. The other thing was that, you know, the thing that you did that maybe surprised me the most, although I shouldn't have been surprised, is that you reduced the argument to the purest form of the conceit, which is that you debated what a human right is and then explained why healthcare should qualify as, right? And so I kept trying to like reposition you to try and argue that government should be providing healthcare to citizens, but you wouldn't do it. So like you refused to be turned on the mat. But the thing is, it's like you said, that's where that argument is always coming from. So it was ill prepared for that. And I just wanted to say you did a great job defending it as a pure idea, but not with all this other stuff like shot into it. You know what I mean?
To be honest, I had to take it out for myself. There was no way I was going to win on that. There's no way. It's just, you can't just give people free stuff all the time. Regardless of your point of view, you can't just give away free stuff on everything. And the left would agree, right? You're right to, if you have the right to healthcare and it's free, well, that extends to firearms, dude. I will gladly trade universal healthcare for the government sending me guns in the mail. Gladly. Okay, yeah, go get your cancer treatment, dude. I'm gonna go pick up the new Barrett.
The OSAS resident conservative bad boy.
When does the DeSantis gun tax go into effect? He's lifting the tax.
I believe it's Memorial Day, so I got to save up my shekels.
I laughed my ass off when you said that. Please God, don't let me plunge my family into poverty. Benny, so
what is this? I haven't heard about this. Sorry,
he sent it to us in a group text.
I never read his text. They're too wild.
It was like a 13-second text about
not-
DeSantis lifting the taxes on guns for like a month or something like that.
Oh, a tax holiday. Okay, got it. I missed that.
And then he replied, "Please God, don't let me plunge my family into poverty."
I feel like he texts that like every 3 days about some other thing, something or another. But I'm sorry, Howie, I interrupted you. What were you about to say?
No. I was just going to say, I mean, I was trying to answer your question. You said, you wanted to get my thoughts on everything. I thought, first of all, you guys are way smarter than I am. You guys did a really, really nice job with defending both positions. I couldn't take notes fast enough, honestly, to really kind of consolidate all this into, blow by blow. But I think that I think it got a little convoluted with the definition of what healthcare was. And I think that Steve did a nice job kind of rebounding by like rephrasing it, because I think we started getting to a point where like we could say that everything is healthcare and clearly everything isn't healthcare. And Ben, I think you did a nice job kind of getting him to concede on that, there's a difference between like the healthcare that you're provided with and things that you can do to make yourself better. The one thing I thought was kind of, I don't know, like you were talking about stuff in nature. I'd asked you the question about, like how people find things in nature and are able to use them on themselves to, to help with their care and everything like that. And you had said that like medicine's different because it's basically gone through a period of trial and error into like where we've created it into an institution because people have tried and everything like that. But don't you think that that's where healthcare has kind of gotten? Like, how many times did we like screw up fixing a broken arm before we figured out how to like get it to be the right way, or different combinations of drugs and things like that we've given to people that weren't good, and then we find the way that it ends up working out and ends up being better. I think that like you can make the case that healthcare is found in nature because, we've done lots of trial and error to find certain things that do exist in nature and different combinations that people can use and they do consume it in a state of nature. That it doesn't necessarily have to be through an institution.
I would say the only thing I would say to that is that I want to make a clear distinction between nature and a state of nature. So to me, maybe this is just the way I think of it, but to me, a state of nature means a human in the wilds that has no cultural, technological, or civilizational knowledge about anything that we would recognize in the place in which we live today. So, this is somebody who would not understand that you could strike steel against flint to make a spark and create fire. This is somebody who would just be out there, like stumbling around, like essentially just a monkey without hair and maybe with less adequate physiological defenses, right? Like there's no fangs, like there's no gross musculature, like it's just like a naked person, like in the woods. This person can still try to defend themselves. Like you have an animal reaction to a predator that's attacking you, for example. This person can still, maybe they don't have language, but they can still grunt or use hand gestures to express themselves. That's a freedom of speech. That's a right that exists in nature. But there is no knowledge of medicine. There is no knowledge of healthcare per se.
But no, that's the thing, though. But what I'm saying is that when you're sick, you want to feel better. That's an innate reaction to want to feel better. So how did we eventually end up finding things that made us feel better if, we can't just stumble upon those things? It's like, that's kind of like where I had a hard time accepting that as a point right there. I understand what you're saying, and you do a really nice job with that, but I still think wanting to feel better when you're sick is you have a natural innate reaction to try to feel better in different ways. Like look at like a dog when it doesn't feel well, it naturally goes out there and eats grass. There's no one told the dog how to do that. They just do that. You know what I mean? I think humans do the same thing. So I think that healthcare is in a state of nature in some degree, maybe not as organized and as technologically advanced as we think about healthcare now, but I still think that healthcare exists in a state of nature.
So you're making the argument that Steve was making, which is that the dog or the human provides that care, that healthcare, if you want to call it that, for themselves.
Well, you were just saying that it didn't exist in a state of nature. All I was trying to say was that it does exist in a state of nature in some capacity.
See, you guys, this is interesting. You guys are both trying to make the point that healthcare is care that one provides to oneself, and yet you both have shitty internet. So there seems to be like a socialist sort of orientation that's going on over there.
I was just saying that it does exist in a state of nature. You're saying it wasn't. That was the only point that I disagreed with you on. I thought you did a phenomenal job coming in with the facts and all this other stuff. I think you did a really, really good job defending the position. I think that you represent
that was some S-tier
really
spin
well
on that, by the way.
So the one thing I'll say to that, first of all, thank you. You're both giving me too much credit. I had, by the grace of God and the luck of the draw, the easiest job tonight. And I'm just going to recognize that and say that all I was doing was being and saying the things that I typically am being and saying. So that was easy. You guys, I think, Johnny, you didn't get a lot of chance to talk, and maybe the moderator won't in these debate episodes. Maybe the moderator is really just not going to have a lot to do except frantically try and keep notes because the conversation is just going well. But I thought you did a great job of interjecting and sort of like redirecting and trying to get us to like flesh out things that were being said.
No, totally. Yeah.
And Steve, once again, as the guy that was the first person to try and defend the left position, I just, expectations met. Like, as much as I should talk, like, I knew you were going to do a great job, and I feel like you did. So
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think you guys, like I said, I think you guys both did really well. Good first episode.
Guys, this is a great segue because now let's figure out what the fuck we're doing next week, right? We can actually spin the wheel and understand the torment that one or several of us will feel for our next round.
Benny,
shall we?
In the outline, you said the moderator was going to do that, but you had said last time I opened up the Wheel of Doom, it had a bunch of stuff in front of it like ads. I don't know if you want to just spin it this go around until I can get the ad stuff figured out, or do you want me to spin it?
So Johnny, what I think, so here, how does this sound? What I think we'll do is I'm going to pop up the wheel. Can you guys see it?
Yeah.
Yep.
So having popped up the wheel, I'm going to spin it, and then I want you to announce to our listening and viewing audience what the topic ends up being. Now, in the meantime, what I'm going to ask you both to do while I'm spinning is pull up the Spotomatic drawing machine And if you haven't already done so, and I don't think you have, I'm going to ask you guys to go to the link and we'll draw rolls while I'm doing this. Does that make sense?
I gotta try to find this.
Does everybody? Yeah, if you guys need the link, I can send it to you again really, really quickly.
I got it. I just gotta scroll through here real quick.
Gloria Esteban?
If you could resend it, that would be great.
Let's see now. Now that I've said that, can I resend it?
Nope,
This is great radio.
never mind.
Beauty. Okay, with that being said then, in that case, I'm going to go ahead and spin the wheel. And close catapult. What do you think, John Boy? You want to read it out loud to our audience?
The debate topic for next week is going to be voter ID is racist.
Very good. And what does it say at the top of the window that you're reading that from?
Was it? It says enjoy your cancellation.
Yeah, exactly. We're all going to be canceled, in other words. All right, I'm going to do mine real quick. Steve, have you done yours?
I have.
Well, that only leaves me one option, and so... No! All right, what did we all get?
I got the left.
Steve is moderator.
I am moderator.
You're defending the right
Thank
again?
God.
Son of a bitch I am.
This thing is rigged.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, like, am I pulling this somehow for my own benefit?
Oh, wow, this is so surprising. I'm so surprised.
I'm just talking about stuff I normally talk about.
Unbelievable. I don't know what to say about it. What did we say? You know what? One thing that we did add to the board that we didn't announce to the viewers is that there is a dealer's choice slot on the spinning wheel now. And if we do land on the dealer's choice, the moderator gets to select a topic and a role, or delegate roles. I think we're still maybe ironing that out. But in any case, we just finished the debate for round one. Next round two, is going to be voter ID is racist. So that should be an interesting one. I would suspect, I don't know, what do you guys think? I think that's going to be a shorter debate than this one was.
I think
so.
But
yeah.
I can't wait
Although
to-
it would be interesting.
I can't wait.
I have faith in you, John. Yeah. I have a feeling that we'll discover more to talk about as we dive into the issue, probably. So, anybody else? Do you guys want to add anything to the debate before we move to the roundup conclusion?
Yeah, I think we covered just about everything.
Yeah.
John Boy?
No, I think I said everything I wanted to say. Like I said, I think you guys did a phenomenal job, and I think it was a good first episode. Good kind of benchmark to kind of grow from.
Yeah. Tech issues aside, that was kind of frustrating, but. Once again, this podcast is in its nascency, so I hope that we'll get a little bit of grace from the listening and viewing audience as we try to work through some of this stuff. If you guys could stop being such socialists and actually get reliable internet, that would be really helpful. Johnny, I could expect it from you living in the boondocks of Eastern Connecticut, but Steve, honestly, I expected better. Get your shit together.
I'll get my shit together.
Maybe if you stop drinking purple gin all the time, you can invest some of that money into just like a Frontier subscription or something.
Indigo's where it's at, man.
Oh, you like Indigo now? I see.
Highly recommend.
Okay. This is technically the outro portion of the round, and so this isn't going to be a huge protracted bit per se. But Steve, did you end up coming up with your Reddit source for the heat map that we talked about last round?
I did.
Very good. You can share that on your screen if you like, or you can just tell us about it. So to remind the viewers and listeners, Steve had shown us what would you call it, Steve? A heat map of concern, whereas the people on the progressive side of the aisle were more concerned with things that are far away, things that are maybe international causes, things that are global causes, as opposed to local, familial, community causes. And the right side of the aisle, the conservative side, was the opposite.
Certainly, and I'm trying to pull up the heat map here. You guys seeing this?
Yeah.
So this is the source you were requesting. There's a lot of information here, and I don't think we're going to get too far into it. But like this here, figure.
Oh, interesting. So it looks like this is actually like a survey or some kind of study that was done. Is that right?
There's a study that was done on where empathy lies, and there's the heat map.
There's a heat map.
So just to kind of recap, and we kind of went over this, but the innermost circle here is like your closest friends, so your wife, your kids, your parents, things like that. The second ring out would be like extended family, really close friends. The third one would be like, and we've got the links at the top. It would take hours to go through this, but the third ring out would be neighbors and acquaintances and stuff like that. And then the last ring out is like mushrooms and rocks and stuff. And it shows the difference between where liberals and conservatives place their empathy. And there's a lot more into this. And Ben, you probably read more into this even than I have, because for me, it's pretty self-explanatory, right?
I am the liberal conservative on this podcast. That's probably right.
As you say. I mean, do we need to get deeper into this? But
well, no, you know what? I think it's great that you were able to find that. And what I'll promise to do is I'll promise to post the link to this study in the description of our podcast, either on YouTube or Spotify. And then a week from now, everybody that's listening or watching this will be looking for that link, but I will not have posted it because we're all about making promises and not delivering on this podcast. So,
yeah, boy.
Must keep it named.
No, but in all seriousness, Steve, if you want to send me that link, I can post it so people can look more into this if they want to.
I will.
Yeah, we might eventually rename the podcast to Promises Made, Promises Not Kept, or something like that.
I think it's way better.
That would be on theme, I think, for us. Did you guys have anything like in the news or just like what's going on in culture that anybody wanted to talk about real quick? We have a petition that we've been talking about the last couple of days, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, do you guys send me the link to that?
No, yeah, the Gulf of Connecticut.
Screenshot, but not a link.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and pitch this out to the audience because the 0 people that listen to this could probably really make a difference in this petition. So if you go to change.org, there is a petition currently to rename the Long Island Sound to the Gulf of Connecticut. And I will say that in the link that I sent you guys, which I'll also share in the description, our fair governor, Ned Lamont, in all seriousness said that we should just go ahead and change the name of the Long Island Sound because why not?
God bless him. Good for him.
You know what? Like, dark horse, Ned Lamont came up and like he's actually got pretty good policies. I never would have thought, but kind of like the guy.
Hey, on a side
Kind of
note,
like him.
wanted to let you know that the entire time I was taking notes, I unintentionally grabbed a Yukon health pen.
Very interesting.
I wanted you guys to know that.
So you're giving Steve the victory is what you're trying to tell me.
I mean, that doesn't happen until next week, correct?
Yeah, I don't know if we know yet, but yeah, you're probably right. I mean, ideally, we're going to kick out the decision about who won the debate to the audience. And so there's a way for us to add a poll so that people listening can vote once they finish listening. We'll do that eventually, maybe even for this episode, because this is our first debate that we've done. But you can also email us at ofstrawandsteel@gmail.com. You can find us on any social media. We'd love to hear back. Give us some feedback. Let us know how we did. Give Steve and Matt a virtual clap on the back because I think they both did excellent jobs. Steve, again, I mean, I said you were going to have the toughest job, Johnny, as moderator, but I think Steve really did, trying to twist himself into an ideological pretzel to make the points he made. I mean, that was really quite a performance. So are we going to just be turning out these kinds of like unbelievable feats of intellect every episode? I don't know. We'll find out.
You have to keep watching.
You have to keep watching to find out. That's right.
Racist voter ID will be the tell.
Oh my God. Yeah. That's
canceled episode 2.
I was hoping to defer like conversations about race until much, much later, but I guess we're doing this.
Now let's burn them bridges.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Tailspin completely down.
I'm about to have a kid, so it's not like we have time to do this podcast anyway. It's kind of like, fair enough. Gentlemen, if there's nothing else to add, let's do our outros. Who do we have on the podcast saying goodbye to the listening and viewing audience?
Do you hope?
Me?
Yeah.
I'll go first here. Steve signing off from the free state of Florida, Trotsky superfan.
John Blaze, Storm of Justice, signing off.
And I'm Ben Tomzak. Trotsky was a bitch. Lennon all the way. Good night, everybody.